New York City Office for Economic Opportunity. You should have all gotten the recording message just now. That way we can send out the slides and the important information to folks. I'm Elena Sigmund, Director of Collaborative Learning at the John Jay College Institute for Justice and Opportunity. I'm excited to see all of you who want to learn about the Clean Slate Act, which will do so much to create more access to the workforce for job seekers who have conviction records. How many of you are here today because you work with people impacted by the legal system? Can raise your physical hand or your virtual hand. How many of you want people with conviction records to have more job opportunities? Yes, I see all the hands going up. Awesome. That's really great. I'm so glad that you're going to get valuable information today. Please feel free to say hi in the chat. You can introduce yourself with your name and your organization in the chat. And this panel is actually part of a larger effort to get valuable information and resources out to practitioners, counselors, workforce and academic advisors, peer workers, all the folks who are supporting job seekers impacted by the legal system. And I want to tell you a little bit about Unlocking Employment, which is a free online course, and I'm going to share screen so that you can get some more information about that. Here we go. Unlocking Employment is a free 90-minute self-paced course with 4 modules and a resource library full of great information. So if you want to build on what you're hearing today on the panel and learn more about legal protections for job seekers in New York and supporting the job search, you can invest 90 minutes in your own learning and take the training. Here is a QR code. You can actually register for Unlocking Employment using the QR code on the screen. As an extra bonus, in addition to all the great information in the course, if you start the course and finish it within 7 days, you'll be entered into a raffle to win a $100 gift card. And just for the months of May and June, we will have 3 raffles each month. So you'll have 3 chances to win if you take the course in May or June.
And Elena, I also just dropped the registration link in the chat.
Great. Thank you so much. My colleague Clark Griffith from CUNY School of Professional Studies is hosting the Zoom. He will put the link to the Unlocking Employment course registration in the chat throughout the panel. Thank you, Clark. I also want to thank all of the partners who participated in developing the Unlocking Employment course. We worked with people with lived experience in the criminal legal system, with lawyers at the Legal Action Center, with practitioners at our colleague agencies, Workforce Professional Training Institute, Henry Street Settlement, Osborne Association, the Women's Prison Association. Thank you to all our advisors and partners in creating the Unlocking Employment course. I want to also thank our partners who are here today, Helen Skipper and Colleen McCormick-Maitland. After they introduce themselves, we're going to hear from Colleen, who is a lawyer with expertise in this area, about what the Clean Slate Act is. That will be followed by a live legal consult with Skip and Colleen showing you exactly how the Clean Slate Act will work and what it's like to talk to a lawyer about this new law. And I'm going to have some water. Okay, after that, we'll have a Q&A. We'll have time for your questions. You can also put questions in the chat and we'll get to them during the Q&A. And now our panelists will introduce themselves, and I'm turning it over to Skip.
You're muted, Skip.
No, I'm muted. I'm muted. Hello, everybody. My name is Skip. I am the executive director of the New York City Justice Peer Initiative. Can you tell I have all my Justice Peer stuff on because I'm actually at another event, but really grateful and happy to be here to talk about unlocking employment for those of us who are impacted by the criminal justice system. And I will turn this over to Colleen.
Thanks so much, Skip. Always great to be in a room with you. And thank you so much to Elena and the entire John Jay team for inviting me to participate in this webinar. My name is Colleen McCormick Maitland. I'm the Deputy Director of Legal Services at the Legal Action Center, and I'm an attorney. And at the Legal Action Center, we specialize in assisting people who are facing barriers to employment, as well as in some more limited contexts, housing and other life needs when they have an arrest and conviction record. We also work with people who are living with HIV or AIDS, or who have used substances, or who identify as having substance use disorder, who are facing either violations of their health privacy or discrimination based on their disabilities or their substance use. But today I'm really excited to talk to everybody about the Clean Slate Act and other options for lowering barriers to employment specifically. And I was also a consultant on the Unlocking Employment course, so I definitely encourage everyone to check it out. I think there's some really great material in there. And with that, I can jump right into my presentation. So as Elena said, I'm going to talk a bit about what the Clean Slate Act is. And then after we have the basics down from that, Skip and I are going to do a live legal consult where we're going to talk about how the Clean Slate Act might apply to somebody with Skip's particular criminal background, and what opportunities this might open up for Skip and others like her in the future. So I'm going to share my screen now. Bear with me while I get to my slide. All right. So the Clean Slate Act, what is it? It is an automatic sealing law. This means that there is no need to apply for this type of record sealing, unlike some of the other record sealing and clearance, other types of clearance that we have in New York. There is no need to apply. Once it goes into full effect, it will happen automatically as soon as people become eligible. And we'll talk about the eligibility in a minute. Now, while we're going through this, I'm going to be talking about some of the great ways that the Clean Slate law lowers barriers, but no law is perfect. And certainly when you're talking about something that gives rights to people in the criminal legal system, there's going to be a lot of horse trading between people who want to reform the law and make things easier for people with a record. And then there's other actors who are going to say, wait, that's too much. We need to pull it back a bit. And then there's also the reality of putting things like this into effect, because it's actually a huge undertaking. So here, the law officially goes into effect later this year on the 16th of November, but the law also gives the court system 3 additional years to put this into place, because the reality is this is a big undertaking, and the government doesn't always have the most up-to-date technology. You know, we're not talking about putting a huge undertaking into place at Google or Microsoft. This is the New York State court system. They need some time to actually go through all the records and create a process to seal them automatically, right? It'll just happen by a process of just automatic machination, right? Like once you reach your eligibility, it's going to happen. So what this means is that everybody's eligible convictions must be sealed by 11/16/27, but they may remain on people's records until that date. We don't know yet whether some people's records or certain records will be sealed before then. The law is still very new. It was just passed last year, and it doesn't go into effect until later this year. So there's still a lot of uncertainties about it. what will be eligible? Unlike other sealing laws we have in New York now and other types of record clearing, which are usually very limited in who can actually apply and benefit from them, almost every single New York State conviction will be eligible for clean slate sealing after a waiting period. This is huge news. We constantly at the Legal Action Center get calls from people who have old records, maybe 20, 30 even years ago. And because of the type of conviction, they're never going to be eligible for sealing under that law. Or because they have more than 2 convictions total, they're never going to be eligible. This law changes that. It's a huge game changer. The major exceptions are sex offenses, sexually violent felonies, and Class A non-drug felonies, such as murder in the first degree. If someone has eligible convictions on their record, those convictions will seal even if they have other ineligible convictions. So let's say somebody has a murder, but they also have shoplifting, drug possession, drug sale, those type of cases. The other cases will seal even if the murder never does. So there's at least some relief going on there. And it's important also to know that only New York State convictions are going to be eligible because New York just doesn't have the power to tell other states or the feds what to do. The waiting period for misdemeanors is going to be 3 years with no new convictions. And for felonies, it's going to be 8 years with no new convictions. The waiting periods begin either on the date that someone was sentenced in their most recent case, or the date that they were released from jail or prison, whichever date is later. So if somebody gets conviction and they're sentenced to do probation and they never do any jail time, for them, the waiting period starts the day that they are sentenced to probation. And their time on probation will count towards the waiting period. So if you get a misdemeanor and 3 years probation and you never go back in on a violation, that whole 3 years is going to count for you. Now, if you were sentenced to incarceration, it's going to be the last time that you got out from incarceration. And so that also includes if you are on parole and you get violated on parole and have to do some more time once you get out. Your time on parole out on the street counts towards the waiting period. The time that you're inside, it always reverts back to the date that you were released. And for some people who have really long periods of, usually it's going to be parole, post-release supervision, or the 2 combined, they may be in a situation where they become eligible. They're earning that good time on the waiting period while they're on supervision. But let's say someone has 20 years sentence on parole after getting released from prison. That would be for, a more serious felony. In that case, you have to wait until you're discharged from parole for the cases to actually seal. Here is the huge news. Most employers and landlords will not be allowed to see convictions sealed by clean slate. So for folks who have met the waiting periods and have those eligible convictions, which is almost every single conviction New York State has, you will now be in a situation where when you go for a job and an employer runs a commercial background check, these convictions, after they have been sealed, they should no longer appear on the record. And it is also illegal for most New York employers and landlords to ask whether somebody has sealed cases. Now, of course, there's always some exceptions. These are the folks that are going to be able to see the sealed convictions. That doesn't mean that they're able to discriminate against people. There's still laws in the employment and housing context about discrimination against people who have conviction records, but these agencies and employers and other entities will be able to see the convictions. So you have employers and government agencies who are required to run fingerprint background checks by law. Employers and government agencies that are permitted to run fingerprint background checks because they serve children, elderly, or vulnerable populations. So, some of you may have had experience with the Justice Center, which is a state agency that works with people, gives them clearance to work with vulnerable populations. The Justice Center is one of these entities that is permitted to run the fingerprint background checks. The New York State Education Department which, contrary to what its name might suggest, actually licenses a lot of different licensed fields in New York, including social worker, nursing, home health care, education, and even massage therapy. So this agency will be able to see the convictions. Now, you still have protections against discrimination by the agency. And we also have a project at the Legal Action Center specifically for people seeking employment licensing and clearance. So if you're thinking of going into a field that needs licensing or clearance, or if you are experiencing a denial or revocation, then please do contact us because we may be able to help you. Private transportation employers like Uber and Lyft also got on here. Like I said, in the process of passing a law, there's a lot of people and entities that may jump in and get a carve out for themselves. And the private transportation industry as an employer was able to do that. This exception, it's the exception for pretty much every single thing you can think of. Every anti-discrimination protection, law enforcement and peace officer agencies, fire department, police, port authority, corrections, and gun licensing. That's a big one. We get calls about restoring gun rights at LAC all the time. These entities are always going to be able to see your record, no matter what. There's no ceiling from them. Then also judges, DAs, and others in the criminal legal system. So if someone gets arrested again, their case isn't going to get unsealed. The case will always be sealed, but the judge will be able to see it, and the DA will be able to see it, and your lawyer will be able to see it. And the judge can even sentence somebody higher based on the sealed case, even though it will remain sealed. And the last one is certain federal entities. So specifically immigration, that's the biggest one. Just because your case is sealed in New York doesn't mean immigration can't see it, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to face immigration consequences. So you should definitely talk to an immigration attorney if you're not a US citizen about how this will impact you. And then also if you are trying to get into the military can see these cases as well. Now, like I said earlier, the cases will remain on folks' records until 11/16/27. It could be earlier. We don't know yet. We anticipate that at some point the legal system will create an easier way for people to get these records and to find out, has my case been sealed? But right now, the best way to know what cases currently appear on your record is to order your rap sheet. And if you're a New York State resident, we at LAC can help you, and other legal services organizations may be able to help you as well. Now, between now and when people's records are sealed by Clean Slate, there are other options that you can pursue to try to lower barriers. This includes additional types of record sealing or clearing. LAC can help people with these, as well as other legal services organizations. There's also information on the New York State court website about how to do these pro se on your own. You don't necessarily need a lawyer, but there is a law that if someone has less than 2 convictions total on their record, only one of which can be a felony and none can be violent felonies, well, then you might be able to apply for sealing. Or if you're a victim of human trafficking, you may be able to apply to vacate your record. So contact us and we can look at your eligibility for those and help you out. There's also the Fair Chance Act and the Fair Chance Housing Act. So these are laws that are going to protect New York City residents who are applying to New York City employers or New York City housing providers. There's anti-discrimination protections. There's also certificates of relief or good conduct, which don't seal your record, but can help to lower barriers, certainly to employment licensing, but also to employment because it is a form of evidence of rehabilitation. Other forms can be creating a personal statement, explaining your journey from the time of the offense, or having letters of recommendation, your resume, certificates from programs. You could have your transcript or your diploma from going to school. We can help you to create that package. And then lastly, knowing what's on your rap sheet so that you're armed with knowledge about what the employer is going to see. And you can also correct any errors that are on there. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that these are all things that are covered in the Unlocking Employment course. So you can learn all about the Fair Chance Act, for example, and what employers' responsibilities are and what people can do when they're a job seeker and trying to lower those barriers. And I think, yep, that is the end of my slides. So I'm going to stop sharing. And at this point, I am going to start talking to Skip, which is much more exciting than reading off a slideshow. So Skip, I'm very excited to talk to you about this.
And I'm excited to talk to you because I need to let you know I've been conditioned not to trust anyone in the
Fair.
criminal justice system from the years of going back and forth. So tell me, how do I navigate this? How can you help me?
So first off, I want to give you some good news. So I've had a chance to review your record, which the Legal Action Center helped people to get. So I have seen your New York State rap sheet, and I've also talked to you about your experience. And I see that the last time you were released from prison was in 2007. And I'm looking at your record, and I don't see any excluded offenses in your conviction history. So the good news is that you are going to be eligible for clean slate as long as, knock wood, you don't pick up any convictions between now and 2027. But I think we're good. We're good. I'm not putting that into the world.
That's never going to happen. But I do have some additional questions because I'm not really sure, like, really, what does this mean?
All right.
Do I have to do anything? Do I have to fill out an application? Do I have to call somebody? Do I got to show up in somebody's courtroom? How does this work?
That's a really good question. So there are other types of sealing and vacature. It's another type of record clearing where you do have to apply and a judge makes a decision about whether or not to seal your record. Here, you don't have to do anything. It's just going to happen automatically. Now, because of the way the law was written and it gave time for the court system to actually put this into place, it may be these cases won't seal until 2027. But once the court system puts the whole process into place, then your cases will seal automatically. You don't have to do anything. The only thing that you should do is to get a copy of your rap sheet every so often, which we can help you to do, so that you can see, okay, has it been sealed? And then, I will be checking whether or not the court system has come up with a different way, and I can let you know.
Okay, that's very helpful. Will they notify me? And hold up, before you even answer that, just know that nobody from the criminal justice system or the court system should have my recent address. And if they do have it, there's a problem. There is a problem. But just asking these questions, I just need to know, will they notify us or will this just happen automatically?
That's a very good question. We don't yet know what the notification will look like. And you raise a really good point, which is that for someone who's been out of the system since 2007,
they not know where I am.
They likely do not know where you are. And if they send something to your last known address, it would just be returned to sender or be sitting in somebody's lobby because you don't live there anymore. So yes, we don't know yet. We are hoping the folks that are involved in, this sort of lobbying for this bill and who are in the criminal legal system reentry legal community are hoping that there's some way that people can find out without having to order their whole rap sheet, which, you have to get fingerprinted. It's kind of an ordeal, but we don't know yet. So fingers crossed they won't be sending something to your house.
Thank you, but I have some more questions. Because we are in New York City and this is a place where lived experience is not really recognized, I realize as I look at the political landscape that we don't have too many people with lived experiences as part of the policymakers. So one day, perhaps soon, I might want to run for some type of political office. I don't know, council member, mayor, I don't know. It's wide open. But I knew before, in order for us to do that, those of us who have histories, that we would have to do a certificate of good conduct or relief. Does this affect that? And if so, how?
So my reading of the law is that it doesn't specifically change the other laws that say that for certain public offices, and public office can mean a lot of things, right? It could mean all the way from being a notary to holding an elected office. It could also be a firefighter. It's a very sort of bureaucratic law that lists all these different types of public office. So from my
Yes.
reading of the Clean Slate law, this would not lift that barrier.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
because the law is so brand new, there's still a lot that's getting figured out. My recommendation is that if you are eligible, which you are, for a certificate of good conduct, then you should go ahead and apply for that right now, because we can help you at the Legal Action Center to get the application together. You also don't need a lawyer. You can do it all on your own. And it is going to be potentially another few years for this law to take effect. So, you know, not only do we know that the certificate of good conduct would lower those bars, but also it could benefit you now.
Okay, so I have more questions. Listen, I'm just full of questions.
Please go ahead.
How about traveling to another country? I have lived in fear of even going up to Niagara Falls and trying to get to see Niagara Falls from the Canada side, because I've heard tales of people who've been stopped at the border and refused entry because they have a criminal history. How does this affect that?
Yeah, this is another one of those gray areas where I'm not 100% sure how it's going to work. The idea is that once somebody has their records sealed by Clean Slate, New York is no longer going to report those cases on a commercial background check. Now, Canada is a whole other country. I don't know anything about Canadian law, and so I really couldn't say what type of background check Canada is doing or is authorized to do. So if it's a fingerprint background check, then, you know, under this law, they would be able to see those cases. But I don't know the answer, and I'm hoping to know the answer in the future. And I'm hoping to know the answer before somebody actually has to go and be the test case. Although maybe we could get somebody who just lives in Niagara Falls to try to cross the border right there.
It would not be me, because you're not going to stop me at the border and say, don't come, because I'm not even going.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's happened to so many people.
Yes, until I can figure this out.
Someone I know took a bus all the way up there for like a bachelor party, and because he had a DUI on his record, he had to just get back on the bus and go right home.
Ridiculous. Talk about the embarrassment and the shame. They're shaming us for something that we've done so many years ago and have completely turned our lives around. But I'm not even going to get into that. How does this affect applying for a job now or in the near future? I know it does not officially go into effect until November, and then the state has 3 years to complete all of this work. But how does this affect us who want to look for a job now?
Yeah, so it's not going to have a big impact right now on applying for a job. Though, you know, I would hope that employers would look at people's records and see, okay, well, you know, this is going to be sealed. I'm hoping that people look at people's records and see, hey, it's been 8 years since they were released from prison on this felony. Like, I should hire them. But of course, the reality is there is still stigma and discrimination and, you know, fear. People aren't always acting on evidence, right? They're acting on these sort of like knee-jerk stereotypes. The law does have certain protections for people who have conviction records. In New York City, we have some of the strongest in the state, which is that there's a certain process called the Fair Chance Act process that employers must follow when you're applying. So even when the employer is going to be able to see your record, they still have to interview you as long as they're an employer with 4 or more employees in New York City, and, you know, they're not police, law enforcement, etc. They have to interview you. They can't make any mention of convictions. They never can make a mention of just arrests. And they have to give you a conditional offer before running a background check. They give you a conditional offer. Hey, I want to hire you as long as you give us written permission to do the background check. Then from there, if they're still deciding like, oh, we may not hire this person based on their background check, they have to give you a Fair Chance Act notice that explains based on 8 factors how they individually assessed your case. And then they have to give you a notice of your rights, and they have to give you a copy of your background check. They give you 5 days under the law to look at the background check, challenge any errors. You know, it's not fingerprint based, most of these companies. So it could be that, you know, you're mixed up with somebody else, or there's an old error on there, something that shouldn't be there. But also you have the opportunity to provide what under the law is called evidence of rehabilitation. Not my favorite word, but you know, it is what it is. It's the law. And you can give, you know, your resume, cover, personal statement. You could give letters of recommendation, and the Legal Action Center can help people with those. So though Clean Slate is not in effect right away, there are still protections. And if you're still denied, even after that process, and then the employer has to give you again another notice after that, call the Legal Action Center and we could try to help you to fight the denial or to hold the employer accountable in other ways, such as bringing them to the New York City Commission on Human Rights or negotiating a settlement with them. So it's all fact specific. We're not going to be able to help every single person, but we're definitely happy to take your call, to talk about the facts, investigate your case, and hopefully we'll be able to do something.
Thanks so much for this information, Colleen. I have one very last important, vital question.
Yeah.
As you know, those of us who are directly impacted suffer through licensing nightmares. As we build our resilience, as we get educated, as we build expertise, and we want to get licensed in certain fields. We'd have gone to school, we'd have done the work, and then we have a problem with achieving these licenses. And we already know that the Plan Act is working its way through now, which kind of helps us with our quest for licensing. But does this affect that in any way? In other words, will my convictions be sealed if I was going for a social work license or something of that nature?
So unfortunately, under the law,
man.
under Clean Slate, the New York State Education Department, which licenses a lot of different professions, that particular agency is going to be able to still see the convictions. And you asked about social worker, NYSED, New York State Education Department does cover social worker. And so there is a barrier, but we are trying to lower the barriers, one, through the Plan Act, which you mentioned, and folks can Google it and try to take action in support of it so that we can lower some of those barriers to employment licensure for folks with records. And then we at LAC also have a project to help people move through the employment licensure process. So even though people are going to face an additional hurdle, right? You apply, you do all your training and schooling, you take the exam, you apply for licensure, and then if you are applying to the New York State Education Department, you still are going to be required to disclose your convictions. But once you do that, LAC can help you to advocate to the department for what's, you know, again, a term I don't like, quote unquote, good moral character. They can help you to demonstrate your good moral character. And we've had a lot of success, both with folks who well, in a few different contexts, folks who are applying for the first time. In some cases, we've been able to help them get the license without having to go through a whole hearing process, right? There's going to be an investigation, and we may be able to help you to avoid a long drawn out process right in the very beginning if you call us. We also will help people, so not just people who are currently applying, but people who already have the license and are facing a revocation or a suspension based on an arrest or a conviction. So we can help people there. And we help people at all points in the process. So if people aren't given the license in the beginning of the investigation, we can help people once they get to the hearing portion of it, which is where you get to testify and present evidence of, again, quote unquote, your good moral character to convince the agency that they should grant the license. And though these additional hurdles are very onerous, we have had a lot of success. So there's hope.
Thank you so much. You know, it's a shame that we are continuously criminalized for probably the worst thing we ever did, that we have totally redeemed ourselves and has created the resilience and have moved forward and are now responsible citizens. So thank you for this consultation, even though I just dreaded coming into the office. Oh, yeah.
I'm glad that you came, and I'm glad that it was pleasant.
Me and the legal profession don't really get along well.
Fair.
But I just have one final question.
Mhm.
When will we know if this has happened? How will we know that our histories, our backgrounds have been sealed?
Yeah,
How
so
will we know?
I'd say, pay attention to the news, get on LAC's mailing lists.
Mhm.
We'll have updates as they're arising. And then also, um, if you sign up for the Unlocking Employment course, there's
Mhm.
resources, there's a resource library at the end. And so
Mhm.
that will also be updated as the law changes.
Thank you so much for this consultation. I'm no longer traumatized. I can come into a lawyer's office and not feel like I'm signing away my life. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, Colleen.
I appreciate you. What a lovely compliment.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much, Colleen and Skip. Skip, Executive Director of the New York City Justice Peer Initiative. Thank you, Colleen from Legal Action Center. That was amazing to see what a legal consult around the Clean Slate Act would be like. We encourage everybody who's working with job seekers to get rap sheets, find out what's on the rap sheets, talk to a lawyer about what's eligible for sealing, and maybe there's something that can already be sealed. So now we're going to open up to questions from the audience. If you have very specific personal questions, please contact Legal Action Center directly so that you can get accurate information about your individual situation. But now we open up for general questions for Colleen and for Skip. And I know that there were some already in the chat. There was a question, is Westchester County under the New York State Clean Slate Act?
Yes. New York. So all of New York State is covered under Clean Slate. Now, where I was talking specifically about the New York City Fair Chance Act, that's only New York City, the 5 boroughs. But all over the state, we have different protections, and that's something that you, I think, can explore in Unlocking Employment. It's called 23A, but for the Clean Slate Act, that's going to be everywhere. Westchester, Chautauqua, literally like every one. I think it's 52 counties. They're all covered.
Thank you so much. And yes, those other New York City laws are included in the Unlocking Employment course. So please register. I know Clark will put the link to register for that in the chat once again. And I know we have some people who are holding their hands up. We will go to live questions too. I did see that there was another question in the chat. Since this is going to be taking effect in November, if you had to do a background check with the Justice Center between November 2024 and November 2027, rather than
question.
supplying all those documents, can you just send a letter back saying that the prior convictions are eligible for clean slate, or will they still have to submit evidence of rehabilitation?
You will still have to submit evidence of rehabilitation. One, because, mainly because, so if this was a regular, like a private employer, you would still have to submit the evidence of rehabilitation because they can still see the record. But for the Justice Center specifically, they're on the list of excluded agencies. So even after Clean Slate fully takes effect, the Justice Center is permitted by law to run fingerprint background checks because they serve elderly, vulnerable children populations. So they're always going to have the exemption, the Justice Center. But, again, I hear there's like a whole packet of things you need to give to the Justice Center. If you need help with that, please contact us, and the attorneys who work on, and the paralegals who work on our licensing and clearance project will be happy to help.
Can I just say something real quick about the Plan Act? Because I know someone asked about that. I have something right here. I'm actually at an event with the sponsoring organizations, and my organization is also a sponsoring organization. The Plan Act gives justice-involved New Yorkers a fair chance at professional licensing. The bill creates a simple pre-application process that applicants can use to determine whether their conviction history might impact their license application before investing time and money in education and training. And this act is currently working its way through the Senate and the Assembly, and it does have a bill number. We're working on this. We're pushing this forward.
Thank you, Skip.
Mhm.
I think Steuben had a hand up. Steuben, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did, but I forgot already. I just want to give a shout out to Colleen. I like the role play. I definitely want to say what up to Skip. Me and Skip, we went to school together. I was glad to see her
So
here.
bad. You know, I love you,
But my
baby.
question was more personal, so I won't waste everybody's time with that. So I'll reach out to you guys.
Yeah, reach out to
Up to
us.
Colleen.
Yeah, reach out to LAC because then we'll have attorney-client privilege and everybody doesn't need to know your personal business.
Yeah, you know I love you, brother.
I mean, I would ask it, but it's not, I think other people want to know more generalized. It ain't that personal.
I see there is another question in the chat. How long does it take for a certificate of good conduct or relief to be approved?
It depends. It can happen. I mean, I'm going to give you a ballpark of around 6 months. We've heard shorter, we've heard longer. It really depends because there are different places where you have to apply. So depending on your record, you may be applying to the court where you were convicted, or you might be applying to the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision. If you're applying to the court where you were convicted, some counties are really fast. Some counties are really slow. Some counties, Nassau and Suffolk, will actually charge you money for this, which we're trying to figure out if it's illegal or try to make it illegal for them to do that because it's an unfair barrier. If you apply in New York, in New York City or Westchester, it's free. So it's very unfair to be doing that. So I can't tell you exactly how long it's going to be, but I would say give yourself at least 6 months. Unfortunately, we get clients who call us and, for instance, they've gotten a letter from the Department of State, which licensed security guards, and it says, we can't give you the license until you get a certificate of good conduct or relief. And they, already have a job lined up as a security guard and all they're waiting for is a license to get the job. Well, I have to give them the bad news that it's going to take a while and they're probably going to have to let that job go and reapply once they get the license. Because you definitely don't want to be working as an unlicensed security guard, but you are going to be waiting most likely a little bit. And then I see there's also a question about certificates of good conduct and relief. You also have the right to the Clean Slate Act. Absolutely. You can have both. So if you are waiting for the Clean Slate Act to take effect, I definitely recommend that people call LAC or another legal services provider that does this type of work to find out what you're eligible for. You may be eligible for not only the certificate of relief or certificate of good conduct, which has really good benefits, like for instance, lowering automatic barriers to certain employment licenses. If you're applying for even the employment licenses that don't have automatic barriers, licensing agencies really want to see that people have these certificates, and it really helps in the employment context as well. Though it doesn't seal your record, it's definitely a very strong piece of evidence of rehabilitation because it's basically the state saying, yes, you have been rehabilitated since your offense. It's like a certificate of basically like they're vouching for you and saying that the employer should presume that you are rehabilitated. So you should get that. And then you may also be eligible for other things. Skip was asking about employment licensure and clean slate. And like I was saying, clean slate may not make your record sealed for certain employment licensure cases. But if you are eligible for a different type of sealing called 16059, then that type of sealing is actually stronger and it wouldn't be on, you wouldn't have to disclose those cases to the state education department. Or you might be eligible, unfortunately, the reality is we do have human trafficking, labor trafficking, and including sex trafficking here in New York State. You may be able to get your record vacated like it never happened because you were the victim and you survived this trafficking. So yeah, give us a call and we might be able to see what else you're eligible for. If an individual was granted a certificate, will they still get denied a security license due to their criminal history? So once you get the certificate, there are certain types of convictions. And I want to give a shout out to a great resource that's in the resource library, also created by John Jay, that LAC consulted on. It's the Employment Licensing Guide. And it goes through some of the most popular licenses in New York State, including security guard, and it lists out there are certain types of convictions that are an automatic bar to becoming security guard. You have to get a certificate in order to take that bar away, but you still have to go through the process of the good moral character hearing in front of the Department of State. The good news is that the Department of State generally leans towards licensure, as long as people show up and they do a good job in the process. I would say the Department of State for the security guard licensing hearings, we've always had really good results with them in terms of people getting the license. So I think there really is a lot of hope for folks who are seeking the security guard license. Yes, they are. This licensing guide is in the resource library. We do, and thank you, Nicole, for this question. LAC does offer this type of workshop for other entities. I'm going to drop the link in the chat for our training. We offer free trainings for all types of agencies. Any agency in New York State can contact us for a free training. We're happy to do a tailored training. We have a bunch of different topics, including lowering barriers to employment. And we're happy to come and do that virtually or in person at your organization. Agencies can also always call us, as well as community organizations, advocates. You can always call us too for free technical assistance. So if you have a question on behalf of a client or yourself, or just a general question about employment rights, housing rights, private health privacy, anything that's within LAC's bandwidth, you can call us and we're happy to provide free advice on your issue. Folks have other questions?
Yeah, feel free to unmute and speak up, ask your questions. We have time for a couple more.
While we're here, I'm going to put in another plug for the resource library that, it's going to be updating as new laws pass in the Unlocking Employment course. And specifically, I want to call people's attention to a new law that was passed and is going into effect in New York City. So it's only for housing in New York City. So in January 2025, this is going into effect. It's called the Fair Chance for Housing Act. And LAC is putting out a resource about this new anti-discrimination protection that's specifically for housing seekers. It's very similar to the protections in the New York City Fair Chance Act for employment, but we will be publishing a resource and it will be in the Unlocking Employment Resource Library after we publish it. We expect to publish it by the end of June. Let's do it.
So yeah, so since there's seems to be a little bit of time, let me just ask my question, I guess. I had initially wrote something in the chat in the beginning, and I was very sincere when I said that my question is not a joke, but I'm an individual with lived experience. And so I had been denied opportunity to create an Airbnb account because of a conviction. I was like, are you serious? This was outside the country though. I mean, well, Airbnb is here, it's in California, that's the home base, but I was trying to rent an Airbnb somewhere else. I was denied that. And TSA pre-check, I was really surprised. I was like, you're gonna deny me. I have a passport to leave the country, but you're gonna deny me the right to not have to take off my shoes or something? And I mean, is it that serious? And so my question now becomes this, and I just want to make sure I understood clearly. So people that inquire about this information, like in those cases, let's just say, or employers, they request the information from New York, right? So for example, I have the conviction in New York. So then the information has to be received from New York. It's not like they can look at some other database in the next state to find that, right? Because it still has to be connected back to New York. Am I correct?
Yes. And for someplace like Airbnb that doesn't fingerprint people, they're going to be running a non-fingerprint background check. And those come from commercial background check companies. And the commercial background, I actually just went to a training from somebody who owned a commercial background check company. And what they do is they pull from state records, and they can only pull from the non-fingerprint based records. So New York State has a fingerprint based repository. And then they also have a non-fingerprint based repository. It costs $90 for the background check companies to get that. There's going to be in those ones more errors, but the good news is that once Clean Slate passes, New York State should no longer be reporting the sealed cases out to those commercial background check companies that do the non-fingerprint background checks. Now, you mentioned Airbnb. We were involved in negotiations with Airbnb, or a coalition that was trying to change Airbnb practices a while ago. It is an issue, right? They have discriminated against people, and it's unfair. Hopefully Clean Slate will help to address that. The issue with the TSA is a little different because they are pulling from New York, but because it's law enforcement, they're going to be able to get, and it's the feds, they're going to be able to get those fingerprint background checks. And I will say the TSA, they denied a friend of mine pre-check because he accidentally brought a sausage in from a different country, and it was a customs violation. And so he
pork.
can't, guess.
It was pork, right? That's what
Yes.
they got a movement for that, yeah.
Yeah, so he can't get TSA pre-check either because he violated the customs. So I mean, they are just, like real strict with that. But it is pretty unfair. It's very unfair, to not be able to take off your shoes. Like,
I think what's more unfair is to deny me and not give me my money back. I think that's what's more unfair.
that too.
You know?
Yeah,
I've been
there's a
through
lot
much
of that.
worse. Been through much worse.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, happy to answer any questions.
So thank you everyone for these amazing questions. And can we have a round of applause for Skip and Colleen? Thank you so much to both of you. That was really
Good job.
fantastic information. You can see people really want to understand what the impact of this law is going to be. And it's going to be tremendous, for people looking for work. And obviously from the questions today, travel, Airbnb, all of that is going to be impacted. So or at least we hope, right? That's the goal here, to have that benefit for everybody. So we will send out slides from today's presentation to everybody who registered. And I wanted to share on the big screen in case anybody wants to register right now for the Unlocking Employment course. You can actually click on the QR code. Oops, that went to the wrong slide. Okay, here we go. There's the QR code. Feel free to register. I want to just remind you that if you complete the course within 7 days of starting it in May or June, you'll be entered into a raffle to win a $100 gift card. There's going to be 3 drawings in May and 3 drawings in June. So you'll have a couple of chances to win. And let me just ask our panelists if they have any last advice that they want to share with our folks today.
I definitely do. Can you throw up my slide?
Yes, here it comes. Here we go.
So while my slide comes up, let me just have a minute to talk with you. And I'm talking with you, I'm not talking at you. My name is Skip. As the executive director of the New York City Justice Peer Initiative, I spent 25 years going in and out the system, in and out the criminal justice system, in and out homelessness, in and out substance abuse programs. I know how hard it is to find a job when you have this in your history. I remember back in the days knowing that there were some jobs I couldn't apply for because I knew they were going to background check me or that they were going to fingerprint me. And it wasn't that I wasn't qualified. It was just that because of my history And it's a shame that something that we're not proud of, that we've done years ago, it was probably the worst thing we ever did, is still coming back to haunt us in housing and employment. It's like they just don't want us to get ahead. But I want to encourage everyone to persevere. I want to encourage everyone to build the resilience. The New York City Justice Peer Initiative is building justice peers. We are opening up this discourse to those who have the lived experiences of the criminal justice system. I have a conference coming up on June 12th. We will build policy, we will build capacity, we will build professional development. Please reach out to me. My email is here. The link to register to the conference is here. And anybody have any other questions, please reach out to me directly. I will put my email in the chat. Remember, all is not lost. You can work. You can get a job. You might have to jump through some extra hoops and whistles, but we're working to mitigate that. But you can survive. You can build resilience. And I don't mean going to get a job at McDonald's or Burger King. I mean like a regular cost of living job. You can do it. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Skip. That's great. And I'm going to be at that conference on June 12th. I hope to see everybody from this Zoom room in person live on June 12th with Skip. You know, thank you for your leadership and advocacy and all that you have done to build community and get the information out. Thank you, Skip, and thank you, Colleen. Actually, Colleen, I put the Legal Action Center phone number in the chat previously.
And I think Jose, my colleague, just did as well.
Okay, great.
And I put our flyer in the chat, our legal services flyer, our employment license project, and then also the form to request free training.
Great. All right. So thank you, everybody, for joining today. It is 1 o'clock and we are officially done. Thanks for your time. And I hope you'll all join the conference on the 12th. And please register for Unlocking Employment. All the information from today's panel will be in the resource library of that course. Plus more as Legal Action Center develops more information that will be added to the resource library. And even after you finish taking the course, you can always go back to the resource library. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Take the course. Introduce your participants to the course. It's valuable information and it gets updated as we update it. So there's things moving and shaking for those of us who are criminal justice impacted. Stay in touch, stay visible. Thank you.